one of the defenses that Ben Shapiro makes about the Georgia law, and he says like voter suppression law, not voter suppression laws, voter ID laws and election integrity laws are not racist. And he said that Jim Crow explicitly deprived black people of the right to vote, whilst the Georgia law does not explicitly deprive anyone of the right to vote. And it's completely ahistorical because the whole point of Jim Crow was that it came after the 15th Amendment, which guaranteed black people the right to vote. If Jim Crow had literally just said, hey, these kinds of people can't vote, it would have been struck down immediately. The reason it was held up was that it was held up in the form of a literacy test, in the form of a poll tax, neither of which was explicitly racially charged, but by its effect, very, very, very clearly surgically affected racial minorities. So basically, you have these laws that are seemingly adhering to the letter of the law, of the Constitution. But the ultimate effect of them is something very, very, very different. And it was because of that that the Jim Crow era voting laws were very specifically not targeted explicitly at someone's race, but were racist purely in their outcome. The legal advancements of the mid-20th century were literally to say, hey, we're going to expand our definition of racism beyond the purely explicit, you said this about black people, therefore I'm going to strike down your law. I'm just going to reset this. So the claim that Jim Crow was explicitly targeted toward black voters is not only wrong, it's exactly the opposite of why Jim Crow succeeded. Jim Crow succeeded because it stood up against the initial scrutiny of, the text of these laws does not even mention race. That like when you impose a literacy test as a precursor to voter registration, there's nothing in there explicitly that states, hey, if you belong to a certain race, you can't vote. But those tests were specifically designed and wielded in such a way that overwhelmingly black and also a fair share of poor white voters as well, but mostly poor black voters could not vote. And most black voters at the time were poor because they, generational wealth had not yet developed. And the discretion with which these laws were effected and enforced was also in itself racist. But the discretionary clauses in the Voting Rights Act didn't even describe that a law had to be used in a racist way, in a willfully racist way, in order to be racist. It just said that it has to have a racist outcome in order to be racist. So essentially, you've got a law that disproportionately affects black voters, creating a barrier to voting that has absolutely no constitutional basis, and is ultimately heavily undermining the 15th Amendment, which is explicitly bringing black voters and black people under the umbrella of voting protections already enjoyed by all other U.S. citizens. And the same, even more so with a poll tax, because a poll tax is even more perfectly analogous to forcing someone to get a voter ID in order to vote. Because a poll tax is literally levying a cost on someone in order to be able to register to vote. I agree. To play devil's advocate, what do you say to people who say we need IDs to guarantee that the people voting who say they are? There's absolutely no evidence in history to suggest that's a problem. I think we're in like in all of American history, there have been triple digits in incidents of credibly suspected voter fraud incidents that have actually changed, that have actually gotten through the net. It's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, right? Voting is a bedrock right in a democracy. It is the most important right in a democracy. It's more important than freedom of speech. Not much more important, but you have to be able to have the right to vote for any to have influence over any decisions that happen, right? Free speech is all well and good, but if somebody else has a monopoly of power and doesn't allow you to exercise it into anything, then what's the point of free speech? Can I just go on a trip to the US as a tourist and vote without an ID? No. No, you can't. Because they have a list of all of the US citizens. When you're a US citizen, like, you have a birth certificate. You go into a system. They assign you a social security number. The same mechanism by which you are assigned a social security number can be the same mechanism by which you are registered to vote once you turn 18. The government has records on all of this stuff. There's no way that you would be able, not no way, but like, there is no credible reason to think that any reasonable number of people would be able to show up to a voting precinct and just cast a vote, because you'd have to show up, you'd have to give the name of someone that you know is not going to show up to cast their own ballot. You would have to sign as that person, forge their signature. And then you would have to go into the ballot, you'd have to vote. So you'd have to know this person, know that they're not going to vote, not be a citizen yourself, which means you don't get a vote of your own. And then you have to forge their signature, right? Like, the intricacy that it takes to be able to, like, it would be like you'd have to have serial killer levels of stalking in order to, like, know this person. Ooh, nice. Got a bucket. Free bucket. Like, you talk about voting as if, like, without ID, you can just walk into a precinct and vote. Like, yes, you can, but if you're not the person, you're probably going to get caught. Because guess what? You show up to the precinct, they have your signature and what it looks like on file. And you have to sign right there, and they'll compare the two. And they won't let you vote if the signature doesn't match. Like, there is no evidence to suggest that voter fraud is a concern. It's just not there. And once you get to that point, the discussion's kind of over. Because it's such an important and basic right in a democracy. You have to have a very, very, very good reason to restrict it. And Republicans just don't. There's just no valid argument. It's all like faux populistic rhetoric. You act as if showing your ID for a minute would mean less people will vote. It's not about showing your ID for a minute. It's about people don't have an ID. There are millions of people in this country who don't have an ID because they've never had a reason to go get one. They've never had a reason to go get one. There is no mechanism by which these people are guaranteed to be able to get an ID. Why don't they have an ID? Because people just don't have IDs. Because they're illegal. No. Not even a hardcore Republican would try and make this point that you're making right now. You have no idea what you're talking about if you think that the only people who don't have IDs are people who are here illegally. It's completely untrue. There are plenty of people, especially folks who live in urban settings, who have never had the need for a driver's license. So they don't have a driver's license. They don't have a passport because, quite frankly, like, people don't renew their passports because it takes a long time to renew your passport. So if you're not going out of the country, people don't feel the need to renew their passports. I just joined. The first thing I see is they are illegal. Yeah, Gobunist is a, I hesitate to say Nazbol, though they did correct me on the semantics of what Nazbol stands for. I said that Nazbol stands for Nazi Bolshevik, and they said actually it's National Bolshevik, which makes me wonder if they are not actually a Nazbol. But there's someone who unironically thinks that Trump is the most leftist president in history, so welcome to